Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another Astral interview. Here with me, I have Bonnie Vent. Bonnie, before we go into more about what you do now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe tell us a little bit about maybe where you grew up, your background a little bit, and just so the audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, I grew up in San Diego, California, spent some time in Florida, so my heart goes out to those experiencing the hurricane right now because I've been through that kind of situation as well. And then moved back here when I was like 8 years old. So pretty much born and raised in San Diego, California. I come from a technology background because my mother also did. She was involved in the whole infancy of the computers to begin with. And so that's what the dinner time conversation was. So everybody's pretty nerdy in my family and very heavily involved with the tech and that kind of thing. And I transitioned out of that in 2003.
Right.
Due to, ungodly sets of circumstances, which I found out later on that that's kind of the telltale sign for people that are on more the spiritual, psychic leader, teacher kind of path. We all have that pivotal time where you had to go within or perish kind of situation. And so luckily I'm here, I survived.
Yes.
And so I transitioned out of technology, but I still use it quite a bit in the work that I do. And now everybody's doing Zoom and online, so it's not so unusual now. But basically it started back in 1986 timeframe, right before the harmonic convergence and going through a critical time. And it actually started, and these were things that I had no particular knowledge of at the time, but you would refer to it as automatic writing.
Right.
And it actually started out as drawings, which, having an analytical mind, obviously, well, what does it mean? What does it mean? Drove me insane. And I could never, the first one was like a woman's high-heeled shoe. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what that means. And I don't think it meant anything other than just testing the mechanisms of, was I able to channel?
Right.
And so anyway, that drove me insane. So I said one day, if you can draw pictures and you can draw words and you can write to me. And so then the automatic writing started.
Wow.
And I was very skeptical because like I say, I come from a technology business background.
Oh, you froze for a second. I'm going to pause the.
Not sure where I left off at. Anyway, so started out with the automatic writing and very skeptical in nature. And so I asked for proof that the information had validity. And I've been doing that ever since.
Wow.
And it's one of the things that I find is different from the work that I do, is that I do look for validations after the fact, or sometimes they roll out over time.
Right.
And what I've noticed in the other people's work is that they don't necessarily take that step. They will provide the information and turn loose of it. And, I'm glad they can do that. I wish sometimes that I could. But I've been tasked a little bit differently, that I get put on these journeys that can be multiple years. I've been working with Michael Jackson since literally hours after he passed away.
Wow.
And delivering messages for him.
Right.
There again, what's different about the work that I do is that I actually represent spirit people, as well as doing the high level channeling, which is a high level group. Right. When I get down to the individual level, I deliver messages for them, which is different than the traditional situation with readings, where the sitter is there, you're delivering the information to the living person.
Right.
So I have to chase down, or I refer to it as connection points, people that will get the message where the message needs to go.
Right.
And that's a whole different element that that is, I think, unique to me or people like me, that we're just angled at that different perspective.
Okay. So let me ask you a few questions then. First, I want to share a little bit. My experience with automatic writing was from a class that I went to for automatic writing, and everyone was sitting there and nothing was happening, but my pen started moving like crazy, crazy. And it still does that. It still moves like crazy, and it feels really heavy when it moves. But what it's writing is gibberish. To me, anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to call it gibberish. But so that's the first thing I wanted to share. The second thing I wanted to share was I used to run a business called Astral Connections. So when you say connections and spirit connections, I kind of have a feel for what you're referring to, because we had healers and psychics and readers come in there and represent different modalities of spirituality. And it was all about connections. It's all I could see everywhere was connections, whether it was spirit connections, whether it was spirit to humans, humans to spirit, but it was all about connections at all kinds of different levels. And the beings were at all kinds of different levels, whether they were otherworldly or whether they were afterlife connections. And what I wanted to ask you was, well, first of all, what was the very first connection you made and what was your experience in it? And second, what are the different types of connections you've made and how did that come into your life chronologically?
Wow, there's been quite a few different paths. The first connection I made through automatic writing was a very simple thing. It takes a little bit to explain, so I'll try and keep it short. But I was asking them for validation on the information. So you're going to have to prove this to me. So I'm sitting in my office, a yellow pad of paper and a pencil. And it's kind of funny because I looked at the paper and the pencil, and for some reason I thought if I stared at that pencil long enough that it would move.
I know that.
Right? So I hear this big booming voice in my head say, that pencil would move a lot better if you picked it up. So there's a sense of humor for sure.
Yes.
And there again, when you're going through these things, it takes a while later on down the road to unwind what happened to you at that moment in time.
Right.
Because I was able to hear them all along, because I wouldn't have heard the booming voice to pick up the pencil, right? Mm-hmm. But they're running a test, and some of these tests can be very elegant. So this one in particular was, they had written yellow marble to me. And I said, okay, what kind? Are we talking tile on the wall? Are we talking the toy yellow marble? And they said the toy. Wow. And I said, okay, fine. Toy yellow marble. What does it mean? They said, well, your mother has one. I said, okay, well, can I pick up the phone and call her right now and ask her if she has a yellow marble? No, she hasn't done it yet. Wait until the end of the day. Right. So I go pick up my daughter at the end of the day, and I say to my mother, I said, does a yellow marble mean anything to you? And she reached in her pocket and she said, you mean this one? Oh my God. Very elegant, right? And I said, why on earth do you have a yellow marble in your pocket? Right. And she said, well, you remember we went over to that house and you told me the countertops were uneven and not to buy the house. Well, they'd already put a deposit down. Right. So she took the game of aggravation, which has 4 yellow, 4 blue, 4 green, and 4 red marbles in a bag. They're in a sandwich bag. She just reached in and she pulled one out over to that house, rolled it on the counter that I said was not even, right, and got out of the deal. Right. Very, very elegant. Wow. The high level group that I channel, mm-hmm, they refer to themselves as the connection.
Okay.
And it's actually on my book too. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I see
Can,
that now.
can, yeah, yeah. So very much maybe more important. Well, I don't know. Everybody likes different things. Some people like the celebrity angle. It's been really, really challenging for me, but I know it makes an interesting story.
You finished telling us about the story with your mom and the marble, and how amazing is that? And
Right,
you said, what an elegant way to prove it to you. Um,
right. I
connect.
have I have another example of that also.
Sure.
Um, there again, my understanding is I'm a natural channel, but I received an awful lot of testing along the way from higher level guidance.
Right.
And what they used to do with me, I used to refer to it as touch and go landings, because I would lay there in bed before I was getting ready to go to sleep. And there'd be all these spirit people coming in. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you sense me? And it was just supposed to be my job, I gather, to acknowledge that I could sense them and hear them and that sort of thing. Because as soon as I acknowledged it, they would go and there would be another and another and another.
Right.
And so there again, very much in prove it mode. And they were like manipulating my hands and doing all kinds of different physical things with my body, like an adjustment kind of thing for the energy, I guess.
Mhm.
And so this one particular night, they're in such elegance because I closed my eyes, and in my third eye, what I was seeing was this man's face with white hair, big round face. For those that are Star Trek fans, it's kind of like the friendly angel in Star Trek.
Mhm.
Heavy set, big round face, very long white hair. And I saw him, so I had looked at him. My eyes are closed, but I could see him. And he says to me, blink. And so I did. And it took me a while. It's like, well, what was that about? And then it dawned on me. Can you see me? Yes. Can you hear me? I told you to blink and you did. Yes. Are you willing to do what I ask you to do? Yes. In one simple word. So elegant.
That
And
is.
it's all part of the phases that I went through. There again, I didn't go take classes, and these were things that were occurring in my day-to-day that I now know were coming from my high-level guidance to prepare me for what was coming down the road. And it is important that you honor the messages and that you do what you're being asked to do, because sometimes you just, can I not? Because that's going to be hard
Right.
to do.
Right.
Um, we were talking a little bit about John Ritter being the first celebrity, but I actually wound up having to go up to where his show was taping in Los Angeles. And he was very much on set during that time, and even was giving little signs to me and to the audience. And people were actually acknowledging that they felt his presence. So you didn't have to be all that psychic to feel that. I mean, it was very, very strong, to the point where the actors were messing up their lines because they were distracted, because they were feeling him like over their shoulder or in front of them and that kind of thing.
So when you say, okay, so how did that interaction happen with John Ritter? What were you doing? Where were you? How did he communicate with you?
Strangely enough, his first communication to me was when I was in the shower.
Wow.
And that happens a lot. I find that when I'm in the shower, I tend to get a lot of messages that way, but it doesn't have to be that way. Just happened to be. And there again, I asked him, I said, look, you're a famous person, you're very well documented. You want me to deliver this important message to another famous person who's going to be difficult to get in contact with. So you better give me something really super personal,
Right.
so that that person knows that it's you.
Right.
And so what he said to me, these things stick in my head forever. They never go away. Because what he said to me was, tell him he can keep the socks. I won't tell him he can keep the socks. I won't need them here.
Wow.
I don't know what that means. Just on its face, I have no idea what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Several things unfolded, though. The first episode of the show, after he had passed away, there's 8 references to socks in that show. So obviously it's some sort of inside joke that they know that I don't know.
Right.
And the person who the message was for,
Right.
he made the claim that John Ritter, when he traveled, used to forget to pack socks. And so he would have to give him his socks. So you can keep the socks. They're, again, very personal, very inside,
Yeah.
between these 2 guys that travel all the time. And, oh, he keeps having to borrow my socks because he forgets to pack them.
Right.
Very, very interesting that, and what they choose. And you think about it as a living person, if you passed away and you had to communicate back to someone that it was you, it's not so easy.
Right.
And if you're a public figure, even harder.
So why do you think the celebrity, or John Ritter in this case, picked you?
Well, it's interesting because one of the businesses that I have is a service business, and I book classic television personalities for personal appearances.
Right.
And so just so happens there again, right after John Ritter passed, that I get invited to the TV Land Awards.
Wow.
And I was there with Butch Patrick, who's Eddie Munster on the Munsters. And they're doing a whole tribute to John Ritter. John Ritter did the very first TV Land Awards. It's very much a John Ritter night.
Right.
And due to extenuating circumstances, we wound up having to sit at a different table than what the tickets were that we were assigned in the first place.
Right.
So a whole bunch of things happened that caused that. But anyway, the table assignment changed. And so I sat next to John Ritter's family.
Right. Wow.
And of course, I'm sitting there saying, should I say anything or not? It's not the right place and time, but I don't know if I'm ever going to, have another opportunity. And then I had to check myself and say, well, I know you want to blurt this out to them, but he didn't ask you to deliver a message to them. He asked you to deliver a message to his friend about the television show.
Right.
So there again, it's about honoring the message, and, to try and sit in the seat when you really,
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you have to be mindful of the person who you're talking to as well. They've just lost a family member. And that can be incredibly off-putting to come up to them and just blurt something out like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about the guides for a second. And you mentioned your high-level guides. So talk about the guides in the sense of high level versus any other level. I won't say low level, but any other level, and what the distinction is and how you were able to discern what the distinction was.
To me, I started out with, when I was doing the automatic writing, is when I became aware of having one particular guide whose name was Michael. They can have any name that you want them to have, I guess.
Right.
Anyway, he referred to himself as Michael. And he would be around sometimes. I would see him, you know, if I was standing in front of the hallway, because the way my front door worked was there was a hallway straight down, and sometimes I would see him standing there at the end of the hallway.
Right.
Okay. And he said he was my guide and his name was Michael. It's like, okay. So if I was trying to gain information as far as what I was experiencing, I would refer to him and I would ask him, you know, what is this about? What does that mean? You know, that kind of thing. And then one day he went away, just gone. And a couple months went by and he was just completely gone and there was nothing there. And then all of a sudden I get introduced to this whole group. And so I'm asking them who they are.
So introduced, how did you get introduced, if you don't mind me asking?
They introduced themselves to me, and the way they said it was, we understand that you had this individual person who was giving you information. You have graduated to another level, and we are now assigned to you.
Okay.
And we are a group.
Right.
And so I asked them for more information. And there again, I think they give you visuals that are comfortable for you.
Right.
Because I'm from a business setting, what was comfortable imagery for me to see, third eye, is a group of people around a conference room table.
Right.
And each one has their own area of expertise as it relates to not only me as an individual living a life, but me and my mission and how it affects the grand scheme of things.
Right.
And so I asked them for a name and they said, you know, labels and names don't mean anything to us, but we understand that you need that as a way to identify, and that's how it works in the 3D world. So you can refer to us by our function, and our function is the connection.
Right.
And so it's a name and a label, but it's also their function.
Makes sense.
And they provide the connection points that are needed for me to navigate and do my grander mission.
So, and then when you say connection points, you're saying that they connect you to the spirit that wants to communicate through you, basically. Is that correct?
Everything comes through them first. So in that sense, they're kind of a gatekeeper also for my own protection, because I am a wide open channel.
Right.
And so I need to be confident and sure of my safety and that I'm not bringing in anything that is not to the best and highest.
Right.
And that is their primary role in this, is to make sure. So they disseminate information through me, which is high level information, tends to be very forward thinking, planetary type information. There again, I asked for a lot of explanation on the mechanics, because I said, okay, how does this channeling thing work? I know it does because it's a natural process for me, but how does this, what is the process?
Right.
The way they explained it to me is rather like, and if you have an audio background, which I did have a research partner several years ago who did have an audio background, but maybe the best way to put it is like when you're creating music, you have different layers on that track. So you'll have, you know, drums and guitar and the singer and all of that is all layered together to create one song.
Right.
So they layer the information together because they're multidimensional. They layer the information together. It comes out through one channel, which we call it the same thing in the music business. It's also called a channel.
Right.
So it comes out through one channel. And in order to make the information more relatable and more relevant, they tap into my own personal experiences, also dictionary, so they can pick up slang. You know, now, right now they're talking about pivoting, which is in the slang. So they're picking up on that, but they're awkward about it. It's like, oh, you would refer to this as pivoting. So they're not, they don't say it the way that we would, but they're trying to get information out in a way that is digestible for people.
So I want to ask you, as a child or as you were growing up, was this experience part of your life and natural to you? Or did it happen, like you gave me a date, I don't remember the exact year when it started, but what was happening before that and what changed to create that reality in your life, do you think?
I think it was always with me, but due to life circumstances, there again, years have to play out. And then you go back and you go, oh, okay. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old, so I was not raised around my dad.
Right.
I reconnected with my dad shortly before he passed away.
Okay.
And I said, by the way, I'm incredibly psychic. And he goes, oh yeah, me too. But I wasn't raised around it. But my grandmother was from England and very much involved in tea leaf readings, reading cards with a regular deck of playing cards that she learned from a gypsy.
It's funny,
and
that subject matter and researching it just yesterday, the tarot and just regular playing cards versus.
Yeah, that's how it used to be done. And so I grew up around that. And I do remember one time where she really scared me because I was probably 7, 8 years old. And I asked her to read, you know, because she would give me tea, but, you know, it was mostly milk with a little bit of tea. Right. And so I had little tea leaves in the bottom of my cup. And I said, you know, please read my tea leaves, read my tea leaves. And she said, oh, I don't see anything. I went, oh my God, you don't see anything? I have no future. That's not what she meant. But it was very much a part of the life experience. It was very accepted within the female side of my mother's family. And then apparently also on my father's family, I just didn't know it. Right. And they're all from England, Scotland, you know, he's Scottish ancestry, and came over to Canada from those countries. Right. And so it was really not anything out of the norm for me growing up. And one of the things that I did notice as a very small child is that adults would come and talk to me and ask me for assistance. Right. And I would always have some like profound thing, I guess, to say, because they say, oh, out of the mouths of babes, you know. And that's unusual for an adult to seek out a child for advice. Absolutely. Right. But I didn't think anything of it. It's like, oh, well, they were happy. So, okay, that's good. And then in high school, I was the one everybody sought out with, you know, does this boy like me? Does this girl like me? You know, all of the drama of high school, but no one would acknowledge me in the hall. It's like, because I knew everybody's secrets. Well, there again, I was doing readings. I just didn't know that that's what it was. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People were seeking me out and I was giving them answers and they were walking away happy. And that's really as much depth of thought as I gave to it. But it was always there. So you see your guides, right? Like in a conference room setting or whatever it is, you actually see them. And it's not like a vision in your mind. You're actually seeing them on the physical plane in an astral form then? Most of the time, no. Most of the time, no. When I asked them who they were, they used that as a way to identify for me. They gave me a visual of who they who they are.
Right.
But when I channel, no, I don't usually get a visual on them at all. I will get a visual on what they're talking about
Right.
potentially.
Got you. So we talked about John Ritter a little bit, and we talked about channeling and the experience of channeling and psychic experiences you've had. Is it all mostly channeling that they communicate with you through, or it could be something you hear, or it could be something you see and suddenly you know who it's referring to? Or how do the gatekeepers communicate with you about a specific message or a mission?
They, well, the gatekeepers, the connection, if we're talking about an individual,
Okay.
like Michael Jackson, okay,
Okay.
one of the most famous people on the planet.
Absolutely.
Boy, has that been like years and years of whirlwind, because he's a very polarizing figure in and of himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to really honor my charter to assist in delivering the messages. But the connection's role is to say, are we going to allow the channel to be used for this purpose? And is it a high enough purpose to be meaningful to allow it?
Right.
Which isn't that high a bar, actually. They just don't want people coming through me that are angry or very negative, okay? Right. And it's, well, I'm trying to stay on one thing at a time. So with someone like Michael Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
it comes through in bits and pieces, because first thing, he's got to prove to me that he is who's coming through.
Right.
Right. So I was not a fan of Michael Jackson. I didn't follow his work at all. Didn't, you know, obviously he's in the culture, but was not studying him in any way, shape, or form. So the first thing that he did was to play a snippet in my head of Billie Jean.
Right.
And what he chose is going to dance on the floor in the round.
Right.
Well, I didn't know he was going to be performing at the O2 in London at that time, right?
Right.
So I'm saying, well, why is he doing that? I don't, you know, obviously I, like everyone else, we all heard that he had passed away, and it's like, well, what's going on, and that sort of thing. For me, as soon as I acknowledged that message, he came in directly and said, what happened?
Wow.
That was his, what happened? And I said, Michael, you died.
Yes, yeah.
And he responded back to me and he said, but I've been able to get out of my body before, and I was always able to get back. Why am I not able to get back this time?
Right.
There again, with research, he did do out of body experiences.
Right.
Didn't know it at the time he said it.
Right.
But he mentioned it to other people, Deepak Chopra and other people, that he had done that.
In interviews that he did where he mentioned it.
Right. So my role in it is to help the man who has now just gone through this experience, and he's very confused. Mm-hmm. And so when I told him that he died, he went away for a couple of days and then came back and said, okay, I understand now. And he gave me the image of him on his body lying on a table with the Y-shaped incision that's done for autopsy.
Wow.
And he said, okay, now I know I can't go back.
Aww.
Okay.
Right.
So, like I say, this is not fun and games, you know, at all. And then the circumstances of his death, which a lot of it I can't talk about because it's dangerous.
Of course.
You know, same as it was dangerous for him. And you would think, you know, being getting ready to come up on his birthday, on the 29th of
Yeah.
this month.
Yeah.
And so he,
I feel emotions really strongly, so I can like feel really, I can feel sad right now. I can feel the sadness right now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so he's gone through, he said he was not going to leave because he wants to stay close to his children and make sure that everything works out okay for them. So he's not fully transitioned, but he has transitioned a lot.
Right.
And he did come back and assist me with trying to get some information about what that transition process is like. You know, what is it? Because who wouldn't want to know that? Well, what's it like, Michael, over where you are? You know, what are you experiencing?
Right.
And one of the things I found really fascinating, there again, good sense of humor, because he said, well, he said, I've recreated Neverland Ranch minus the zoo. And isn't it nice that you don't have to have work crews and permits to build because you can just create what you want? And he gave me a visual of this library setting. And I tried, there's very few pictures of the library at Neverland Ranch, but it's very similar to that.
Right.
And so he said, you know, you create what you want to create for your own environment because you don't have a physical body to worry about anymore.
Right.
And so that was very interesting information to get in. And that was kind of an exchange of, you know, you help me, I will help you kind of thing. They're still up on YouTube. The original channel messages that I did shortly after his death are still there for anybody to look at. It's interesting because some things just stand the test of time, because every famous psychic was out there saying that they had heard from him, and those videos are all gone. They've been taken down and removed. And as we talked about at the beginning of one of the things that I do that I don't see much of is the getting the validations. So I get information, like he says something like, you know, I've been out of my body several times before, why can't I get back? I go research that and see, is there any way I can prove that that's really a true statement?
Right.
And it is. And there's been many of those. And that keeps me knowing that the information I'm putting out is as accurate as it can possibly be, because that's very important to me.
I'm a fan of one, Michael Jackson, B, of interviews and other people's interviews. And I've watched quite a few of his interviews, and definitely I've heard him say that. So it's really fascinating. Like like what happens? Can you be in touch with one of these celebrities anytime after they communicate with you, or the mission takes place and then there's a cutoff?
I don't reach out to them, they reach out to me.
Right.
And usually it's because, in his case, it's because he wants to put out some sort of message, or sometimes he just wants to hang out.
Right.
You know, if I'm on the computer, sometimes if I'm doing something he's interested in, I will feel him over my shoulder.
Right.
And in the channeling work that I've been doing recently, people have said, you know, we can see him. There are some people that actually can see him over my shoulder.
Wow.
Because he thinks that the technology and the ability to communicate with everybody is a very cool thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, we do know in doing the research, so he used to hang out on bulletin boards, you know, which is old technology that we don't even have anymore. So he would be very interested in what people were talking about around the things that he was doing or about him in particular. And he liked to kind of be there under an assumed name and, you know, interact with people as a regular person.
Right.
Which was always a very big part. It's one of the things I did some work with Marilyn Monroe also at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel.
Right.
And she talks about the same thing, that once you reach icon status, not only is there kind of a selling of your soul, but you're so heavily marketed and packaged that people forget there's a real person under there.
Right.
And I didn't know until I researched it later that Marilyn Monroe is very famous for her quotes, because she gave me a quote. And
Right.
this is an after death quote. Michael Jackson did too, which actually wound up on a Michael Jackson quote site, but it was an after death quote. But in her case, she said, it's okay to let them pretty up your hair, but never let them redecorate your soul.
Aww.
And here I am at the Hollywood Roosevelt, and she's talking about the dark people that linger there. And I don't think she was talking about dead people.
Right.
I think she was talking about the wheelings and dealings of Hollywood and how, you know, the experience can be very dark.
Right.
Michael Jackson, same kind of thing.
Right.
He talks about putting in light encoded tones, music in with his music to counteract the darkness that he was obligated to put in because he was in that business.
I wonder what he means by light tones and what his representation of light tones would be. Like coming from.
Well, I just said light tones, but that's not really what he said. What he said was that he put in, because he did a lot of videos as well, he would put in symbolism and anything that he could to decrease the darkness that he was obligated to put in.
Right.
So he would try and get it to a neutral if he could.
Right.
And in some cases, he did amazing songs that were all about unity and all coming together and heal the world, and, you know, things like that that are very obvious in the positivity in nature.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, like, there's a big time span between Marilyn Monroe and Michael Jackson, of course. And
right.
So my question to you is, it obviously doesn't matter when or what time period they passed in. They could come to you for whatever reason they choose to come to you. I guess because, like you mentioned, that you had a connection with the celebrities in your life. So this is what's happening.
Well, and in the, you know, Michael Jackson being like the biggest celebrity on the planet, and you're right, people ask me that all the time. Well, why did he come to you? Because he did have famous friends that he could have come to.
Right.
And there's one particular situation that I kind of got involved with because it really bothered me. And it was with John Edward. John Edward did we're going to communicate with Steve Irwin at the Crocodile. And I had communication with Steve Irwin and actually helped Terry Irwin with some paperwork that was in a file cabinet, which is why he didn't have the state funeral and had his own private funeral. All those things were all written in the documents that she didn't even know existed.
Wow.
So anyway, so famous psychic decides they're going to do this thing and they're going to sell tickets and so on and so on. And Steve Irwin came to me and he said, just telling you, I'm not going to talk to him, because to sell out my fans like that is just not, you know, that's not what I'm about. And, you know, I like to be authentic, and this is not authentic. And so I tried to get a hold of John Edwards' office and say, hey, you know, please have him rethink doing this. And it went ahead anyway. And the upshot was, you can go back and read it, the upshot was that Steve Irwin did not come through. And people were very upset because they had paid tickets to hear Steve Irwin, and Steve Irwin didn't show up. So at least he had the integrity to say that, yeah, he didn't show up.
Right.
But so that can be a reason why you don't go to somebody famous, because if they don't honor the message, they don't honor the message.
Right.
You know, and so it's not as easy as you might think. the other thing too is that I found out very shortly after I received the first information from Michael that my daughter worked with a non-famous family member of Michael's
Okay.
here in San Diego.
Right.
And she was the first one to do the validations. And there again, I said, Michael, you got to give me something that is unique to you and this person. And so he took me back to when he was in Gary, and that he remembered playing Parcheesi on the floor with her in the house in Gary.
Wow.
So he even knew the specific of what game they were playing.
That's very.
And she came back and she said, yeah, she said, that's the last time that I was actually able to interact with him on a normal basis, because after that they hit it big. And then there'd be family reunions, but the famous family members were on one side, the non-famous on the other. And we didn't have much interaction with each other after they hit it big. And she said that was right before,
Right.
yeah, in the house in Gary. And so there again, these are things that I couldn't possibly have known other than I was told by him, and she was very honored that he remembered that experience.
Right. So, okay, we talked about celebrities. Can you give me an idea of how many celebrities have come through you?
Well, the most recent is actually famous, but not for entertainment, and that was Tesla.
Oh, wow.
Nikola Tesla came through and had information. And there again, these videos are all out there. People can take a look at them for themselves. And it would be nice to have someone who is an expert on Tesla to actually go through the information and let me know what makes sense and what doesn't. There are some things that he said that were really odd to me. That when I looked them up are absolutely true. He had like some weird fixation with pigeons, and he would save pigeons that were ailing. and he was talking about that, you know, he liked pigeons better than he liked people.
Oh.
Yeah, that they were much more loving and, you know, than people were to him.
Quote of his where he says he doesn't like people, he likes animals more than people, but
Yeah.
specifically pigeons.
Yeah, it was.
I work with a man named David Sarita, and he, I believe, was director of one of the Tesla organizations. And he's a scientist himself and invented frequency energy devices for healing and for spiritual growth. And so he knows Tesla and his teachings and his information very well. I also interviewed a lady by the name of Anya Petrovich, and she's created a healing modality called Tesla Metamorphosis. And Tesla came to her to give her this healing modality, apparently spiritually. And so when you ask, is there somebody who can validate what you've written? I imagine those two would probably.
It's actually directly channeled, so it's video.
Wow.
And so you get the thing that I really like about the channeling more so than the written is that you get a glimpse of their personality.
Absolutely.
And their sense of humor and he did have a sense of humor. And I'm just going from memory, but he talked about the difference in the time frames. And he said something about, you know, when I say JP Morgan, I mean the man, whereas you think of the banking institution.
Yeah, the company.
And so he was referring to the man, and that the man was incredibly difficult, and that he had to go, you know, begging hat in hand, you know, to JP Morgan to get funding for his projects.
Right. Wow.
And one of the things I was trying to hunt down, it's still kind of pending. I don't know if I'll ever get the answer, but I did some research at the Hotel del Coronado, which is, you know, here in San Diego County. And I did find out that the electrical was under Westinghouse patents, because there'd been a long-standing urban legend, not true, that Edison put in the lights. Well, Edison didn't put in the lights,
Right.
and it was under Westinghouse patents.
Mhm.
And there was a film came out, I think late last year, called Currency War. And that I got very much involved in that research, because Tesla and Edison were at odds with each other as far as alternating current or direct current. But at any rate, this actually came through a spirit person at the Hotel Del, who I was chasing down a murder case, very famous murder case there. And this person was a laundress at the hotel, and she witnessed this person be killed. But in the course of telling us what she witnessed, she was talking about this bell system, and the laundry is external to the hotel, and right now they're preserving it. So the original laundry, the building, is still there, and it's about a block away from the hotel.
Right.
And so what she was telling us, the reason why she, was concerned about the person who got killed was that she was summoned by this bell system to come into this room. And this room does not exist present day, but it does exist at the time frame we're talking about.
Right.
And it was a brandy and cigar room. And that she was asked to remove the tablecloth because they'd spilled brandy. And then she was asked to come back a few minutes later, and she was annoyed by that. But at any rate, she talks about this bell system. And I thought, well, I have not heard anyone mention anything about this bell system. But one of the things that it would have to be is wireless.
Right.
Right? Because a block away.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that this, again, is research I've done after the fact. We know that Westinghouse bought some Tesla patents. And so what I'm trying to hunt down is what to prove is, did Tesla actually create the electricity that was used in the hotel? Because it was very, very advanced for its time.
Right.
And up until like the 1970s, electricity was sold back to San Diego Gas and Electric from generated electricity at the hotel. They don't do that anymore.
Right.
But that system lasted a very, very, very long time.
Wow, those are serious investigations. I mean, like, you're a psychic and you're a channeler, and you do automatic writing, but now this investigative side to you has to come to the result of the messages you're getting. And so
Exactly. And I think Tesla came to me because I had that question.
right.
And and this is all still pending stuff, because he said that we, as in the people that follow me and my channeling, are part of an experiment that is also being performed in his dimension.
Right.
To cross the energy through. And I don't know, we're getting pretty close with some of the things that scientists are working on. And he mentioned magnetism as being the perpetual energy.
Right.
That doesn't cost anything to run, and it runs forever.
Yeah.
And so he said, you need to work on your magnetics.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of free energy research and study and all that, and magnetics does play a big part in that. And even the products I promote right now for David Sarita, they're PEMF devices, right? So pulse electromagnetic frequency devices. Oh my God, there's been some amazing, fascinating results as a result of what he's done. And he's created them as a result of his meditations and guides and guidance. And in one case, in a dream, God writes him a letter to to create something, and creates it. So, and very, very, very fascinating technology.
Yeah.
So I'll share that with you at a later time.
Okay. Yeah, I did have a conversation, a very brief conversation with Edison.
Did you?
And that one was interesting because long ago, I used to do free email readings off of my website. And this email pops in, and this man is telling me that his son has passed away, and do you have a message? And so I tuned into it, and I got a visual, and he's about 18 years old, and he was standing in front of his casket, but he had a necklace in his hand, and he was pushing it like, see, tell him I have the necklace. So I write back to him, I tell him the visual that I see and make sure to tell him about the necklace and that he has the necklace. And he writes me back and he says, oh my God, we've been trying forever to figure out where the heck that necklace was. And, you know, and so he said, I believe you, because all I did was say, tell me about my son. And you told me everything I needed to know about my son. And so come to find out that he's actually an engineer for Bell Labs. And he had seen on my research site, which is San Diego Paranormal, he'd seen on my research site a thing called the psychophone. And there's been a lot of talk about whether Edison did or did not do any work with the psychophone. But he said, can you get a hold of Edison, because I want to make a device so that I can talk to my son.
Wow.
And I said, well, you know what? I have no idea. I said, so write down the questions that you have, because I don't have that background. So you write them down and whatever is meaningful to you, and I'll see what I get. So there again, we talk about connection points, because I didn't have a direct connection to Edison, but I did have someone who needed some information, and that is a connection there too.
Right.
So I was connected with a person named Jesse Shepard, who died in 1927. That's a whole different story. But anyway, Jesse was a little bit of a mentor for me, because he was a channeler when he was alive. And so I asked him, I said, how do I get a hold of Edison?
Right.
And he said, really easily. He said, you have a picture of him on your website. Tune into that picture and it'll take you directly to him.
Wow.
And I've heard other people now say something very similar to that. It's like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So here I have this list of engineering questions. I have no idea, but I posed the questions. And of course, one of the things that that we all wanted to know is whether or not he was working on a device to communicate with the spirit world.
Right.
And he said that he was. It wasn't this device, however, but he said that he was, but that he was having a lot of problems with, because he had to generate so much electricity that, and it had to be cold and wet, because he said, you know, dark, stormy night, he said, is a truism. It had to be cold and wet, and that's not a good mix with electricity. And so he said, you know, his assistants were getting thrown across the room, and, you know, they had to shut it down because it was a dangerous thing. But at any rate, he answered every question. So I sent that back to the Bell Labs engineer, and I didn't hear anything back from him, you know, so I waited a month or so, and I sent him a note back and I said, you know, did any of that stuff make sense to you? And he said, oh yeah, all of it. He goes, I'm working on it.
Oh my God.
And it's like, okay, great. And one of the things too, you look for small little things. When Edison signed off of the communication I had with him, he used the initials TE. He didn't use his full name. And apparently that's something he did in life as well, is he would use his initials, not his name.
Right. And
so there again, it's all about the validation and someone else validating it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't able to validate that that information was correct.
No, because you had no idea, and someone else is letting you know. So that's so fascinating. It's so amazing. I'll share a synchronicity with you. Yesterday, a water tank burst, and I was checking it out, and I went to turn on the light bulb just to see it better, what the damage was. And I turn on the light bulb, and water comes running down the
Mhm.
right back off, and I kind of sort of cursed Edison and light bulbs. And here I am today, getting you telling me about Edison, and oh, like serious
Well,
synchronicity.
that's like one of Edison's embarrassing moments, because the currency wars was about him suing everybody who's made any claim to any light bulb.
Right,
And during the course of that lawsuit, he found out that some guy in Germany invented it before he did. Oops. So he's the inventor of the first US light bulb.
right. Yes, I remember doing that research too. That
Which
he,
also goes back to, and Michael Jackson talked about this too. It's really funny when you put this together, because I'm trying to figure out, how does this stuff work? You know, how does the communication work?
yeah,
And Michael Jackson's little joke that isn't, because he'd be up in the middle of the night scribbling stuff down. He'd write on the walls and just outrageous. And they'd say to him, you know, why is this such an emergency that you got to be up in the middle of the night? And he said, if I don't write this down right now,
right,
the powers that be will give this to Prince and he'll do it.
right,
Okay. And they did have similar situations going on. That was his little joke. I have to do it, otherwise they'll give it to Prince.
right,
And same thing with these inventions. They're given to multiple people at the same time. Some people take action, most don't.
I'm tempted to ask, have you communicated with Prince?
No, he didn't come to me. And there again, if you don't have it, I did ask about the circumstances of his death
Right.
and was given a visual.
Hmm.
Um, I have also done that with Robin Williams. I asked for information.
For your own personal knowledge.
I wanted to know whether or not there was anything that I needed to do additionally with the situation, because I will offer assistance to them if they want it. I don't seek them out,
Right,
but I can check with my guidance and say, hey, you know, did Robin Williams check himself out, and is he still okay with that, or did something more nefarious happen?
right,
And they said, no, it was his desire to leave at the time that he left. He was not going to be able, with the things that he had physically wrong, he was not going to be able to live his life the way he wanted. And he made his decision and he's comfortable with it.
wow.
Uh, Prince, on the other hand, he didn't make the decision to leave.
Oh,
And there is things that happened, and I was given information, but I don't have anyone to deliver that information to, and it's dangerous to reveal the information publicly.
of course, of course.
And I've been in situations, it's not always about famous people, it's not always about historical figures either. There's a double murder case that happened in Coronado back in 2011, and I was summoned by my guidance to go over there. So if I'm supposed to go, I get in my car and I go, because it's rather like the movie Ghost, where he sings Henry VIII I am until she agrees to help him. You know, it's like, we're just going to pester you and you're not going to be able to do anything until you honor this request. And so I was able to talk with the family members and the attorneys that were there at the time that this all happened, and
Right.
give them the information.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people have also exited, as they say, with this whole thing. very dangerous. So I do a lot of work behind the scenes also,
Right.
where I don't publicly say the information. I get the information where the information needs to go.
Right.
In the case of Michael Jackson, and this is about as far as I'm going to go, based upon the information that I had, there was another much higher scope investigation done,
Right.
and money allocated from one place to another to pay for that.
Right.
And they were told to stand down and to discontinue their investigation. So there's only a handful of people that have that kind of power that can have that situation. And so that's why I have to be careful. But I can say that I did everything that I could to make sure that the real information would be investigated, because the information that is out publicly is not what really happened.
So sad.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
So okay, so you're just a messenger and they come to you, which is quite amazing, and that they choose to come to you. What about other celebrity mediums or psychics out there? Is there many? Or do you know of any others?
I really don't, in the sense that it's a very slippery slope to say this person's legit and that person isn't, and that kind of thing, which is why I like to say, if you are indeed legit, then validate your work.
Right. Of course.
And if you're not validating your work, then I'm going to be skeptical.
Right.
Because anybody can make any kind of claim that they want. For me, this is a very high integrity thing. Some people, it's just entertainment.
Right.
And I've been in that situation too, where it's like, oh, we want to make a TV show about what you do and how you do it, but we're not going to let you really do what you do, because the production company needs a certain thing to make it entertaining, and it has to be dark, and it has to be scary, and it can't be heartwarming, it can't be sense of humor.
Right.
And so the messages get misappropriated.
Yeah. And you're not going to allow that, right?
I can't. Because but other people can and do.
Right.
And don't have any problem with it at all. But I think my charter is a little higher than maybe what other people, it's for the benefit of humanity and for all, but I also help out individuals. Historically speaking, I did some work at the Cosmopolitan Hotel, and that video is up also, where the spirit person came directly through. One we refer to as the gambler, and the other is the Lady of the Night. Both have been witnessed by numerous other people. They just call the gambler a cowboy because they don't know he's a gambler. We know that from the information he provided to us.
Right.
The thing that was very interesting for me about that experience was it was the first time that a spirit person came directly through, and I was able to get up and walk around. And so I'm actually up and walking around in channel.
As the spirit person.
As a spirit person.
Okay.
So you're hearing their words, their concerns, and the thing that was very interesting to me about the gambler is the disconnect on the time frame, because he's from approximately the 1870s, 80s time frame. And he said that he was there, gambling is a stage stop. So if you were going on to another place, you stayed there overnight. And so he said he was there gambling, and he said, I must have said something that I shouldn't have, and someone shot me. And he thinks this is all just kind of normal. It's like, I said something I shouldn't have, now I'm dead. Oh, well. Very casual about it. But the people that were with me were using Sony Handycam cameras. So when he came through, first thing, he's trying to acclimate into a physical body. He looks down, he notices he's in a female body, and that's kind of a weird deal for him, you know? And it's like, oh, what is this? You know, and he's like stomping his feet, you know, which I don't know if he was trying to get grounded or what he was doing. He was like stomping his feet. And then he becomes aware that he can be seen. And so he goes right up into the face of the guy who's got the camera.
Right.
He just goes right into his space. It's like, oh, hey, you can see me, you know? And of course the guy's like solid goosebumps and he's freezing and, you know, he's feeling all the physical effects of the spiritual person there.
Right.
And the disconnect history-wise is that the gambler thinks that the cameras are some sort of weapon.
Right.
And he's trying to identify what they are. And the guys that are running the cameras are going, no, 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 it's not a weapon. We're not here to hurt you. And of course, the gambler is saying, well, any guy who's not packing a weapon, I got an issue with that, because in his time frame, everybody had weapons.
Right.
You know, he's Wild Wild West guy, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And so it's funny how they're like talking over each other. And there again, physical things happen in the environment. In the room is a fireplace that is remote controlled. It has electronic ignition, just like your stove would. And so the fireplace was on, and there's pocket doors between these two rooms. When the gambler decides to leave, which is when we asked him whether he knew the lady of the night, he decides to leave, which is interesting. But when he decided to leave, the flame blew out in the fireplace. And you can hear the remote setting, you know, it's making an alarm noise because there's gas running and there's no flame. And we're not anywhere near it. And the manager of the hotel actually had to come in, remove the grate off, take out the control box and reset it in order to get it to work again.
Wow. Wow. So those are some pretty strong confirmations, I would say, that you were in.
I have no real world explanation for that.
No. Yeah. That's so.
And the only pushback I get on those videos is people say, oh, well, she's just an actress. It's like, yeah, I wish I could act like that, you know, because they're very dramatic.
Yeah.
That's the thing, that the people that hang around usually are kind of over the top dramatic. They have some sort of issue. You know, she was pretty angry, and so my guidance said, nope, you can't come through unless you calm down. You know, she's willing to help you, but you can't put all that anger into her physical body. And so, you know, so she's out there, you know, telling her own little story of what's going on with her, and she's waiting for some guy to come back, and he doesn't come back. And the gambler's just like, oh, well, you know, I was just hanging out here because it's fun, you know, kind of thing. And I do sometimes get, because these, you know, these are very public, they're on YouTube and so on, people will stay at these hotels and they'll contact me from the room and say, you know, hey, I have, you know, weirdness going on.
Uh-huh.
And so I actually have had one example for sure where it was the middle of the night and the guy was running the camera on his phone because he was hearing this stomping of feet. Wow. Going on the wood floor. And of course his wife and his daughter are asleep. And so he's, you know, saying, what is this?
Right.
And I said, yeah, that's the gambler stomps his feet. I don't know why, but he does.
Wow. So what I want to ask you now is, I want to get away from the communications and the spirits, but I want to talk a little bit about what they say about the afterlife. Like, are these spirits that are in the astral plane, like immediately, for lack of a better word, above us, and they're still hanging around, and so they're communicating? Or are there spirits, like, I would think that after you move on to a certain point, you have no care of what's going on here, right? you've moved on and you've carried on with your spirit world reality. But can you talk a little bit about the spirit world now and that reality and what you've learned about it from the experiences you've had auto writing and channeling and communicating psychically with the other side?
There's two ways I can go with this, and maybe I'll do both. In talking with the connection, they explain that realm as if you remember 33 and a third records that have grooves running on a flat plane,
Right.
that they are just in the groove right next to us.
Right.
So they're not within the average person's ability to visually see and hear, but they're not very far away either.
Right.
Which may also be why, it's so often reported that, right after a person crosses, that family members will see them,
right.
At the edge of the bed or, things like that.
Yeah.
And so it is a process, and they do get farther and farther separated, presuming they have no issues.
Right.
Now, the Gambler and the Lady of the Night and Michael Jackson and Marilyn Monroe, all of these people are all I have issues people. Right. Or I have information that I need to get out to other people, or, they have something still unfinished business.
Right.
Because, yeah, most people, you don't hear from them again after they've crossed. They're, off to their new existence. Some people say it's rather like getting born here, just in reverse. Okay. Because you were somewhere else before you were born into the 3D world. Right. And then you have people right there greeting you, helping you through the process of this world that you're in now. So that's a very comforting thought, that because I had a project that I was working on, and it'd be wonderful it was a television show, because it was called Transitions. And these were regular people that were talking about right that moment in time when they left here and what happened right after that.
Okay.
And so there were a bunch of different examples and these were just regular people. The first one, though, pretty dramatic. And it's funny because I was working with Fox News about something for Anson Williams, had nothing to do with my psychic stuff at all. Right. But Anson Williams' mom was a psychic, so that got discussed with the producer, and I said, oh yeah, I'm working on this thing. And he was actually able to validate it based upon the information. And this is a regular guy. Right. But he was riding in his car and, turning the radio, he gives me a lot of detail, turning the radio up, and it's stormy, and needless to say, he gets into an accident and the car turns over down a ravine. And he said, just when I thought I was okay, this branch came through the car and impaled me, right? So he's showing me all of that. And then I asked him that. I said, what happened next? And he said, all of a sudden I was out of the car and I was up on the side of the road, and these little white beings were there, and they just took me by the hand and said, come on, it's time to go. Wow. There was another story of a young girl who'd always had medical issues. She was in and out of the hospital her whole life. She had received a blood transfusion that had tainted blood, and she wound up dying as a result of that. She talked about life review, and she went into what we would consider to be like a little theater, and here's the movie screen and the red curtains and everything. And she's sitting in a comfortable recliner type chair, which we now have those movie theaters with recliner chairs. And she's sitting there and she's waiting for her little movie to start. And in comes this dog. It comes bouncing in and jumps up on her lap. And the dog had passed away like a year before she did. And she was so happy to see her dog.
Oh,
You know, I mean, it's really heartwarming, you know.
absolutely.
But TV's not interested because it's not, you know, horrific. But anyway, so she talked about seeing a movie up on the screen, a little replay of, and this was her life review, was actually like clips out of her life.
Yeah,
And
I've interviewed a few people about their near-death experiences, and inevitably they mention this life review thing. It's in different forms, but it's still the same concept. Like it's, you know, that review seems to be there.
yeah, there was another one where the person had passed away, and he died pretty young, but he had a young son, and he was like regretting, you know, that he had not been there for his son. And he was given information apparently in life review that that's the way it was supposed to play out, and to not feel badly about it, that that was the agreed upon plan ahead of time.
Right.
And so he said, you know, okay, now that I know what I know, I feel much more comfortable that I left at the time that I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, these were all right at the time that they were leaving.
Right.
And the car accident guy, he was, like I say, that was verified by resources from Fox News. He was actually able to, he gave me enough information because he came, I didn't even know. I just thought they were supposed to be just stories.
Right.
But I gave it to him because it was written, and he had someone check it out, and they said, oh, you know, he said, good on you. He said, you know, this all validates out. I wasn't even looking for validation on those stories. They were just, I thought, just supposed to be representative, but they really were actual people.
Amazing. Amazing.
Because he gave me his name. He said his name was Tim Shaw, and he said when he passed away, and so there was enough pertinent information.
Right. So the next question I feel like asking you, and I don't even know where it's coming from, is have you ever channeled a child that came to you with a message that died before they died before the child died? Does that mean anything to you?
Maybe the one I was talking about, the one who had been in and out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Because she was young.
Okay.
She was probably 8, 9 years old.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why, but I guess keep that in the back of your head. Maybe something's coming. Who knows?
Yeah.
I just felt compelled to ask you that. So now I want to talk a little bit about, we talked about the celebrities, we talked about the spirit world a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about your book. How did your book come to be?
Oh, and let me show you the book.
Yes.
If you can see.
Yes.
This book really is, you can thank Michael Jackson for this book in actuality. It was a project I was compelled to do, and it was just a few months before Michael Jackson passed away. March, April timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working with my research partner at that time. And what the connection wanted me to do was to put together just introductory information basic questions that people start out with at the very, very beginning of inquiry into a spiritual path or just
Mhm.
anything outside of the day-to-day.
Right.
And so my research partner asked very general type questions, and some of them are a little more off the beaten path. You know, I talked about elementals, you know, fairies and things like that, and whether they actually exist. And they said that they do. So like every basic entry kind of question.
Right.
And when Michael Jackson passed away, they were in video format on my website. And when they found out that I had been in contact with him, the fan base all kind of descended on those videos.
Yeah.
And they said, you know, this is great information. I've never thought anything about anything spiritual before in my life, but you've got 4 videos up there and I want to go back and I can't remember what got answered on what video.
Right.
So can you put it into a book? And so we said, yeah, of course we can. And so we took those videos and transcribed them and put them into the book.
Wow.
And the people that picked up the book said that the thing that's really interesting about it is that you can just hold on to the book and just go like to any page randomly, and there'll be an answer to what your question is.
Amazing.
So it has like a magical kind of quality to it.
Right. I want to ask you, did you ever meet or communicate with Sylvia Brown?
I did, actually. I paid a lot of money, and I met with Sylvia in Los Angeles. She had I guess, an apartment kind of thing. It wasn't her house, but it was when she was doing readings in LA, that's where she would be. And my mother like wanted to kick me because I wanted to talk to Sylvia about all of my experiences and what is this about and what is that about, and you know, I thought she'd be able to help me,
Right.
you know, further. And so I didn't get any kind of traditional reading at all. And so I went there and loaded her up with information.
Of course.
And I had a picture that I showed her that she was like just amazed by, because it was when my daughter first got brought home from the hospital as a newborn baby. And here's this in the picture, you can see this woman in like a 40s style, tight, you know, straight pencil skirt and, you know, fancy hat and the whole thing. And I showed that to her and she showed it to her husband. And she said, wow, you know, look at that. Isn't that amazing? You know? And so I asked her, I said, you know, when am I going to be able to make a living doing this work? And she said, oh, you will, you will, you will. Can't really say I've ever made a living doing this work. Not so far. It would be nice to have the information out to more people, you know, so I do focus on that, getting the information out as much as possible to as many people as are interested. But it's rather like planting seeds. They have, you know, I can plant the seed, but they have to come looking for it.
Absolutely.
And so the information is there, you know, when people are ready for it.
So,
but I had two so-called readings with Sylvia Brown, and sad to say, neither one of them had any accurate information in them. And my feeling in fairness to her is that when we crossed the 2000 marker, it seemed like she went a different direction and some of her abilities stayed behind in that time. And she was doing some field research type investigative work too, you know, that Toys R Us in Sunnyvale, which was, you know, on several television shows.
Mhm.
Um, at that time, I think the things that she was doing was legitimate. When she got very wrapped up in television and being, in front of the camera and having to, perform, like on Montel Williams and things like that, I think that she paid a price for that.
Wow. Hmm. Okay, so you talked a little bit about your book, and now I want to talk about, well, your painting,
The spirit art.
your spirit art, and how did that happen? How did that become a reality for you?
I was looking for, I've always had kind of a creative slant, but I was never a person who could draw or any of those things. But, I am good with software and things like that. And so the connection said to me that they wanted me to produce art pieces that had a healing, uplifting property to them.
Right.
And in order for that to be valid, that it had to have a reflection component on it.
What?
Like a mirror, a reflection, like a mirror
Okay.
reflects from one to the other. If you line up mirrors, they go to infinity.
Yeah.
And the reflection of the art pieces have to go to infinity.
Wow.
So they have to be able to take you on whatever path you want when you are meditating or just looking at them. And so all of them focus in the center and then go out from there. And they all have that same reflective aspect to them.
Right.
And now I'm doing floral because what they're telling me is that I need to bring in the elements of nature and because it's what is the Fibonacci spiral.
Mhm.
And so those elements, the elements of nature, need to be brought into the art pieces. And so I'm using flowers
So fractal
as mm-hmm.
fractal geometry then.
I would say that that's probably the most accurate way to put it. Yep.
Wow.
So they look pretty if you just want something that looks pretty. If you want to use them as a tool for meditation, they are incredibly powerful.
Right.
And the larger the piece, because you can get them in different sizes, the larger the piece, the more energy they seem to give off.
Right.
And so they have kind of a portal quality to them.
Wow. Well, I do you have something you can show me?
If you go to my website /bonnievent.com/shop, all the art pieces are there.
Awesome. Amazing.
So you can plug those in later if you want, or I can send you, if you want still shots, I can send them to you, some
Yes.
examples.
Can you share two things with me? One of the stories in your book that stands out the most to you, and two, describe one of your paintings or spirit art to me that stands out the most to you and why.
Well, as far as in the book, I have not looked at this book in a very long time. So let's try out the magical properties of this book.
Okay.
Okay, well, what we're on is mass exits on this side and post-mortem apparitions on this side. So mass exits, which is kind of what we're going through right now with this pandemic. A lot of people are opting out. So I'm just going to go with that. I think that's the message because I'm always working. So John asked the question, it says, one last question regarding transition and history in this case. We think about things like the Holocaust and wonder how it comes to be, any major event, positive or negative actually. And many people have wondered, did over 6 million people agree to be victims of a few hundred other people in a Holocaust experience? Or was that an example of one of these glitches we talk about in the universe?
Wow.
Okay, so the answer is kind of long. You want me just to read the first paragraph?
Yeah, sure.
Or if you want me to read more, I will.
Nope.
Um,
Paragraph, and they can buy your book for the rest, I guess. Or I can buy your book
okay.
for the rest.
It says these types of events do occur throughout history. Large numbers of people exiting all at the same time. You will see this even in your very recent history of a few years ago, where massive amounts of people all exited due to a tsunami. You also have people exiting due to earthquake. And in the United States, I'm getting goosebumps, sorry. And in the United States, a very prominent thing in history of 9/11 also would be in this category. And yes, these are people who have all agreed to participate. One of the things that you will notice is that there will be people that should have been in a particular place and time that the event occurred, and for whatever reason, they were not there. They were delayed. They had something else that came into their mind and they needed to do. They avoided the situation.
Yeah.
This is the fine tuning of the process. So even though you may have been destined to be at the location, if you were not part of the agreed upon family that decided to have this experience as a group, you will not be there at the time that the event happened.
Wow.
And it goes on for more, but that's a good stopping point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it also proves what I was saying, that no matter what page you go to, it means something.
Yeah.
And that's a very timely
It is. And
answer.
we're talking to a larger group, so it's not an individual message to me or you. It's a mass message.
It's a global message, right? Absolutely.
How amazing is that? Okay, now tell me about one of your spirit paintings that stand out for you.
Probably the ones that stand out the most for me are the ones that I like to say they're commissioned by Michael Jackson, because he plays a role in the creation of those pieces.
Right.
And in those particular ones, because I start out with a base that has all the color schemes and everything included in that, and then I use the software to create the image that I'm looking to put down as the final product. And he will provide me with that base, the base colors and the base information that I use to create it. And then he'll sit over my shoulder and he'll tell me when he thinks it's done.
Hmm.
And so those are his gift out to his community.
Mm-hmm.
And he will tend to put them out at times that he feels they need them the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like right now, there's a lot of people going through a lot of things. And so just recently, he had me put out, I've done 3 now since 2009.
Amazing.
And the first one was, the base picture was with him and Lisa Marie at Neverland Ranch with the children walking behind.
Nice. Beautiful.
And when you look at the finished product, you can actually see images of little, they're cartoon images actually of little children with little crown hats on,
Oh,
in that one. The second one was, he was playing piano at Neverland Ranch and he's wearing this royal purple shirt. And that is all comprised in, as well as the wood of the piano, is all in the finished product.
when you're creating the spirit art, is it energy that's moving through you? Is it channeled energy art? Is it like Michael Jackson's hand working through you, or is it guidance coming through you and you're reproducing what guidance you're getting? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't really know how. Well, in the case of Michael Jackson, it's here's your starting point. Here's where I want you to start. Now you do what you do, and I will watch you, and I'll let you know when I think it's just exactly what I
Right.
need you to do.
Right.
So he's not doing it, but he's like supervising it.
Hmm.
I want to put it that way.
Yeah.
I want to create a particular result.
Hmm.
And with the other pieces that I do, and even regular artists who draw will tell you that they always know when the piece is done.
Right.
You just get that feeling that, okay, this is,
Complete.
and I think all creations are channeled in some level or another. If you ask people, if you ask inventors, if you ask people that do art or music or whatever, they will tell you about the flow, and that they're either in the flow or they're not in the flow. And when they're in the flow, the thing writes itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or draws itself, or um, even some sculptors will talk about how they're chipping away trying to get the image that's inside. So they're removing, the image is already there, they're just removing the external pieces that don't belong, kind of idea.
Right.
So I think that they're all channeled in one form or another. If
Right.
you have the ability to draw, which I do not, I use software.
Right.
But that's considered to be valid artwork now too,
Absolutely.
which is nice. Because it used to be, well, if you weren't doing the canvas and the easel and all of that stuff. But it really is about how does, all of it is about how does it make the person feel when they see it.
Right.
And I tell people with the art pieces that I do, that it's the same as if you're picking out crystals or stones or whatever. It needs to resonate with you, and it will if it's for you. And if it isn't for you, then it won't.
Right.
And so I keep creating different ones, and I also have to keep an eye out on people that just want something pretty to hang over their sofa. And so if it's pretty and it has all these magical components to it, they may not know about the magic, or they may not care. They may just like it because it's pretty, or it's the same color scheme that their house is in, or something like that. And so I don't give up any of the magic, but I also make sure that they're very vibrant and that they're pleasing to the eye.
I can't wait to see them. So, Bonnie, I've kind of come to a point where I'm feeling that close. There's no more questions coming. But I do want to ask you one last one, and that is, if there's something you want to share, if there's a question that I may not have asked because I don't know how that it even exists, let alone how to ask it, can you then end with something that, to close here, that's something you want to share with us?
Maybe the best thing to share right now is what the Connection's been sharing, which is don't take your set of circumstances for granted.
Right.
So if there's a project that you've always wanted to do and you've been putting it off, or writing the book or creating the music or doing something that is joyful to you,
Yeah.
don't put it off. Do it now. Take advantage of the technology while it's there, because they keep telling me that some of these tools might go away.
Huh.
And so time seems to be of the essence.
Right.
They were telling me several years ago about the fall of governments, and please, angle your careers into things that bring joy, and not so much the traditional career path. And so here we are, and you can go back and you can look at those channeled sessions. They're very heavy,
Yeah.
but they're trying to tell you, you're here on a path to have as much experience as you can have. So don't sit back waiting for something in the future, like, when I retire, I will do it now. And especially with the pandemic, most people are having to sit home anyway.
Right.
So focus your energy on your passions.
Right.
Yeah, you can binge watch Netflix if that's your passion, but if you feel like you've got something that you want to contribute,
Yeah.
now's the time to take action on those things. Don't wait, don't put them off.
Right. Do you want to do a little channel for us?
I suppose I could. You kind of caught me off, but I can
I
do
was
that.
going to, and then at the last minute, it just happened. So,
No, well, that's how that is.
yes. Um,
Okay, so the way this process works is I have to get myself into that space and then they will come directly out, and they do work in question answer format. So you can speak with them
okay.
if you want to.
And would you recommend speaking on a personal level, or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Their their they their charter is to assist with whatever questions we have.
Okay. Let's do it.
So no such thing as a stupid question. And I don't know if they have anything they want to say or not. Maybe they do. I think I kind of spoke for them just a minute ago. Maybe that's why you're getting
Maybe.
that nudge, because I was speaking for them.
Okay.
Greetings, dear one. We are so happy to have this extra opportunity to communicate. We do hope, as the channel said, that this information is disseminated far and wide. There are blockages occurring in the three-dimensional space at this time. The way to get past the blockages is by sharing, dear ones. Share with each other. Form into your own like-minded arenas. You will need to do this as you proceed ahead. As they say, make sure you buckle your seatbelt. The times are indeed chaotic. You must maintain your balance as others around you lose theirs. They will not always appreciate how calm and collected you appear to be, but over time, they will wonder, what does this person have that I don't have? And that's how we crack through. We need to reach a tipping point here on this global planet.
Wow.
Gone should be the days of fighting over dirt. Do you understand how crazy that sounds when put in such simple terms?
Yes.
We have talked a lot today through the channel, through her stories. We do give her full credit, but we also keep a very sharp eye on what she says and how she relates. It is quite true that we do use her brain power in order to communicate. We are a group. We do not particularly have a title, but we are referred to as the connection, as that is our function. It is no accident that in the book, there was a reading about mass exits, as many are going to opt to exercise that exit point. You will find in your life that there have been other times where you could have left and decided to stay. but it is a choice, dear ones. So if you are deciding to stay, then you are also deciding to come to the table and to participate in a new future, in a new way of being. And for those that hear this and understand it, it will resonate with you. You already know who you are. And others are background players, just like in any film or production. They are necessary as well. There are no judgments here, but background players will leave when the scene changes, whereas main characters will remain throughout the entire production. We hope you understand, and we hope that you choose wisely in what you decide to do. There again, no judgments.
Thank you.
We were asked earlier about other people who put out information in a similar format to this one. What we will tell you in the way of discernment is that if the information is not loving and positive in nature, if it is judgmental, then you need to dismiss that information. There will never be a time where universal energy will give you negativity. We hope you understand this.
Thank you.
It is the struggle against that creates the negative. And much like magnetics, it either draws or it repels. Unfortunately, most are drawn to the negative, and the positive tends to be overlooked. We suggest for those that are on the spiritual path that you accentuate the positive and try as best you can to stay away from the endless amounts of negativity that you see in your environment. It can actually make you sick, and it does make people sick. So we will leave with this, dear ones. Be very kind to yourselves and to others. Be careful about your physical bodies. They are important as well. Some people on the spiritual path tend to neglect the physical. We suggest that you incorporate those all together.
Right.
If you have a question, we would be happy to answer it.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. One personal to do with my own experiences with automatic writing, or channeling for that matter. I've had energy move through my hands and my body. I've experienced that, but there doesn't seem to be a control over that or an understanding of how it works through me. Could you please tell me more?
It is a matter of the energy flow. You will need to be a little more patient and understand that it is a process. We actually had this explained to you earlier for that reason.
Right.
There is a process and an evolution to these skill sets, even for those with natural God-given abilities. There are tests along the way. And it is helpful, which is why we explain this to you, that those tests are not to be judgmental, but to see where your interests lie.
Right.
And in some cases, it is just a matter of being in a quiet space over long periods of time. Otherwise, it happens in catastrophic events.
Right.
We would not wish catastrophic events upon you, dear one. So best to set the intention that you would like to have that experience, and you would like to have the information that is derived from this to be more meaningful to you. It may also be that you need another form of communication,
Right.
as this one can be very laborious to sit and to determine what the writing is, or if it's even readable.
Right.
In many cases, you will find that the auditory will happen before the writing happens.
Right.
And that is a good form of communication as well. This particular channel does have a mode that she uses, which is not pencil and paper. It is actually on the computer, and you could try this as well. Sit in front of the computer and just start typing the information that you are receiving. This might be helpful for you as well. It is just as effective and a little bit easier to read afterwards.
I have attempted that, but same thing happens. My hands move at a amazing speed and amazing weight, but what transposes is not something understandable to me at a cognitive level. Although I definitely know that there's some kind of download occurring.
That is truly what matters the most. Incorporating the downloads into the physical is what everyone is being asked to do at this time.
Right. Well, I will say thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us, and I'm hoping we can commune again together in the future as well. I look forward to speaking to Bonnie and as well you in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, dear one. Until we meet again.
Do you,
and we shall.
for me specifically? Thank you.
You're so much more eloquent than I am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bonnie. It was such an honor and a pleasure to interview you today. I learned so much, and it raised my experience of channeling more, because I've interviewed a few channelers and I've talked to and communicated with a few channelers. When we communicated today and the way you conveyed your experiences with spirit was felt very, very, very authentic. And I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, that's really super important to me.
Absolutely.
And I can't be, it's how I'm wired. I can't be any other way. But I do recognize that other people really have no issue with it at all and treat it like entertainment, which is, you know, probably why I'm not as popular as everyone else, is that I'm not trying to entertain, I'm trying to inform.
Yeah. And I truly, honestly feel like it's a huge responsibility.
It is
taken lightly. And if you're going to take on this task, you have to follow through. You can't leave it half completed in any way either.
Absolutely.
There's a being on the other side that needs you and wants something serious. And there's a being on this side that needs to be communicated to. And this can't be done by somebody who isn't responsible. It has to be someone who's willing to follow through with everything.
Absolutely. And I kind of make it a joke, but it's really not a joke. And that is that, you know, they don't have wallets and money to pay you either. Because what I found, because I talked to several people that said they'd had communication with Michael Jackson. And I said, well, you know, why didn't you come forward with the messages? And it's like, well, there was no sitter, you know, no one was paying me to do it.
Right.
And so they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, is that I take those on and I follow through on them.
Right.
And no judgments. It's just that I think that differentiates what I do from kind of what you're seeing
Right.
out there in other people. And you're noticing, you already said it before I did.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. It's a different level, and it's very deep and it's very intense. And it's not always light and airy and sweet either.
No, and you could tell your commitment to this too. It's not lighthearted, and it's not like you're gonna follow through. You're gonna get to the end of whatever this situation is or this mission is, and of course they're gonna communicate with you then, because you know they can count on you.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to mention too, because you're talking a little bit about process, because I was asking about, you know, how do they know like where I am physically to, you know, connect in?
Yeah.
And they said that channelers and people that are open actually project a white light that they can see, and the stronger the light, the more powerful the channel.
Right.
So that's what they see. In their dimension, they see a white light that represents you.
Wow, that's amazing. While we were in this interview, and I don't know if I want to record this, I'll may edit it out later. But my hands were basically doing what yours were doing most of the time. You know, when you were doing this, mine was,
Oh, how funny. Yeah.
it was like there was an energy moving through me. And when we were talking about editing, and you know, I saw a light bulb in my third eye, and and so it felt like it felt like there was some kind of connection happening that was separate from the actual interview that we were doing together. It was quite,
Yeah.
it was quite connected.
People have talked about that, because for a while I was doing at a place called the Healthy Spirit, I was doing like group channeling sessions, and very small groups, about 10 people. And they were reporting feeling like the connection was coming to them personally, and they could feel like they were trying to connect up with their brain waves to get information that I could convey.
Yeah.
And so they were actually, like you're saying, they were actually experiencing sensations during the channel of their own individual connection with my connection.
Like, here we go again. Like, there's sometimes
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's never really off for me. They're quite right. They're always like doing something. It's never really off anymore. I remember asking somebody that I consider to be a kind of a mentor, saying, you know, is there such a thing as being a 24/7 channel? And they said, well, gee, I don't know. I've never heard that.
Right.
And it's like, I just feel like it's always on now, because you'll hear other people talk about, oh, I can shut it off, or, you know, I seem to always be on standby.
Right. Yeah. And I would think that you want to be on standby for them, or you know, some channels will say you can communicate with me between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Mondays and Thursdays or something, and then that's my time. But it seems to me that you want to be an open channel all the time, so that, I mean, it's a huge ability. If you're going to take it on, then take it on fully, right?
Yeah, and sometimes that's get in your car and go drive to the location, you know. It's those are more rare, luckily. It's better if they just come to me where I am, but sometimes they really want me to physically go to the location.
Right. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you. I always appreciate the conversation for sure. It's not very often I get to talk to people who, like get me. So it's a wonderful thing.
Well, it's interesting because if you'll go to the website, you'll see Metaphysical Hub, um, where we make Astral Connections. And Astral Connections used to be the name of my store and business. Well, it wasn't really my store. I was a partner to somebody else. It was originally her store, but I came in there to help her run it, promote it, and expand it. But it was like I got a lifetime of metaphysical input in those 2 years that I was there. Every single modality,
Hmm.
every single crystal skull, anything and everything. I got the knowledge of it. I got the certificate for it. I've interviewed people who engaged in those things, and it all had
Hmm.
a period of 2 years or a year and a half. Like, so crazy.
It's really funny for me in metaphysical bookstores because I decided I was going to go to a tarot class.
Right.
So I didn't do anything with tarot, and I use an oracle deck sometimes now just as a way to kind of wrap things up. But I never studied tarot or knew anything about it. I go in to take this class, and the person that's teaching the class, I'm getting like all this information about her, and she's having problems with her back, and da, 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 and so it's like, oh geez, So I waited till we took a break, and then I walked up to her and I said, I'm getting all kinds of information about you, and things that you need to take care of, medically speaking, and she just goes, oh wow, and then she like puts down a card, the tarot card, and it was the Tower. She puts down this card and she says, tell me what it means to you. And I said, well, I don't know what the definition of that is. And she says, it doesn't matter, just look at it and tell me what it means. And so I gave her whatever information, and she said, oh yeah. And she handed me this card, and I didn't follow up on it because I asked somebody, I said, I don't think this is a cool thing. It had a sword going horizontally across on the card. And there was like, it looked very secretive.
Yeah.
And so she said, yeah, she says, there's people that were, trying to get into this other group, and, you definitely, and so I would kind of blow stuff out of the water. I would go to like metaphysical fairs and things like that, and I'd just be standing there while someone was giving a reading to someone else, and they'd always ask me if I'd move.
Right. Wow.
Because my energy was like blowing them to the point where they couldn't concentrate.
Yeah.
And so it's really funny. It's like I've never been able to go steady. It's always been, my guidance telling me what I need to do. And I even learned, it's called the EMF balancing technique.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like Reiki is. And so I took that class, and the other person taking the class had breast cancer. And so I was picking up on that. And it's like, what am I supposed to say? It's like I'm getting, because I am a natural medical intuitive, and I'm getting this information. It's like, I don't want to have to say to this lady, oh, by the way, you have
I
cancer.
said to Spirit too, I don't want the responsibility.
Yeah. Luckily, we took a break and had a little bit to eat, and she knew she had breast cancer.
Right.
So, phew.
Yeah.
But then I thought, you know what? I don't want to charge people money to give them information about their health that is such, potentially life-threatening, bad news kind of thing. And so I walked away from it, even though I have the natural ability to do it.
Same. Yeah,
I guess if you're a wide open channel, you can channel anything, healing energy, individuals, high level guide. It's all coming through that one energy source.
Any last messages for me from anybody?
Oh, you're cutting out. Sorry. You said any message for you?
Yeah, any last message for me from anybody?
Well, I think the 11, I think the 11 had something to do with you.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, I see 1111 a lot, and I have a friend, anytime it's 1111, sends 1111.
Yeah, it literally was at my feet, and I know it wasn't there before. So I think that one was definitely a message for you.
And
No, I'm not picking up any loved ones or anything that want to come through or communicate at this point in time.
I think,
But we've been very focused on the higher level, and they took every opportunity, even nudging you, to get that out. So
I really enjoyed this connection. Thank you so much once again.
oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, love. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Blessings.
Blessings.